So I translated a playwright from French to Italian. I'm a translator from French to Italian. I edited several books about this playwright who write about how television, how our society has changed the human being into an object. I think, from my experience, that we are becoming more often the object, the human trash can, the bins, where televisions, where media are putting their rubbish programs into our lives. We are like beings where we are absorbing all time in our life without knowing how they are putting in our lives their rubbish programs. And when I talk about programs, I'm saying market, publicity, everything is a market, everything is a media. I don't know which is where is the reality, where is the fiction. Media, they are transforming our state of mind in our life. I'm working now as a nanny, and I saw every day that when the children come back at home, then the first thing they do is take our television and switch on, and they are totally addicted because I can see them like computers, totally without. They are paralyzed. They are totally shocked because they don't want to eat. They don't want to move from their chairs or their sofa, because they are looking this television like an automat. I don't know, a kind of computers. And when I prepare for them the supper, they don't want to move from the sofa to the table for eating, because they are totally paralyzed in front of the screen. So I think now it's becoming always more and more difficult to educate these children. And when I was child, me too, I was put in my chair for hours and hours and from these programs, and they are like drugs, I think, because I don't know, but they are emotional fictions, and they work very well on the feelings, the histories, and children, teenagers are more and more often addicted because they don't want to go out, because they are watching the history and they want to know where the history is going to finish. So, and they want to know the develop of these rubbish histories. And I don't know, but I think these kind of fictions, they changed, I think, in my opinion, that our life. How can we develop our relationship as well? Because they are transforming our lives, our relationship, and they move the media, the televisions, the journalism, this fucking I read sometimes these little newspapers, and they talking about only of murders or killers. We are scared. We are scared in our society, because they want to get panic. They want to get scared people. I think the system of the media, they were so full of this kind of panic. I don't know, maybe you can understand me, because I think they want to get panic in the society with this kind of information, because when they speak about murders every day in the newspapers, I'm really scared, because media is transforming and television is transforming us like objects. I think we are objects for them. So I'm not an object, and I don't want to become a bin where they put everything in my life like a bin, because obviously our minds are taking these signs from television, from publicity, from media. I don't want to become a bin, because I don't want, but I'm becoming without knowing. I don't know how are my real needs. Where are our real needs in our life? I don't know anymore, because we are so rubbish now. I don't know, because we are becoming all time addicted by these programs, by these sofa programs. But what are they doing? What are they doing? The media are transforming our culture and our behavior, because I don't know if my behavior with my neighbor is gonna be or could be the same if I won't be able to transform my relationship with my neighbors, because we are all time in our houses, and we are with our screens in our rooms. I don't know if I would be able to become a friend of my neighbors if I hadn't this screen in my rooms. So if I forget that I have a screen, a television in my room, maybe I could be able to become friend to my neighbors, or I can have the desire to go out and to drink a beer with someone. But I think a lot of people are so lazy now after work that they don't want to go out, they don't want to speak with each other. I don't know, probably we are always more sad because we don't have any contact with each other.
The most important way in which television and the media has affected my life negatively is through advertisements, really. I think there's a lot of misrepresentation in advertisements, and they show us an image of the human person that's not obtainable and not real. I don't watch loads of television because there's just not very much on it that's very worthwhile, I think. But when I do watch it, I'm really shocked at that adverts, especially of women, they're all objectifying women, and they make the human body something to be bought and sold, and they really affect the body image of, I think, especially young girls. I suffer from anorexia, and I think that has been affected by the adverts, because they show an unobtainable body. The other day I was watching a YouTube video of the process that the model went through for makeup, special lighting during the shoot, and then post-production nips and tucks, and they elongated her legs, they tucked her stomach in, they made it look flat, they airbrushed it to the extent where it just looked totally different from the person before the shoot. You wouldn't be able to recognise that person, and I think even advertisements which are trying to affirm women, like for example the Dove campaign for like older women, saying, "Oh look, you're really great. All your wrinkles are signs of experience and maturity." They're still trying to pigeonhole us into our modern conception of beauty, which is a very, very narrow conception. It's having to be thin, bright eyes, flat stomach, toned muscle. For men, it's just a very rigid conception of beauty, which really, I think, a lot of people are affected by it and feel unhappy about their bodies. I mean, I look in the mirror in the morning and I think, oh, I'm so ugly. And it doesn't matter what you look like. It matters your sort of achievements and your choices and who you are as a human person. And I think all these sort of beauty advertisements tell us that our worth as a human being is all down to our appearance, and that's just not true. So that's the most negative effect it has. But I also think the misrepresentation of sex and drugs and violence, that's had a really negative impact. I think most times when you see sex on television, it's, there's a little bit of kissing, maybe a little bit of fumbling around, but generally it's very male orientated, and the guy kind of goes that, they kiss, and then the guy penetrates just like that, without any kind of, there's nothing more to it than a physical, you get, a few sort of angry, like, hoo, hoo, and then they have an orgasm, and that's just not how sex is. I mean, I've had sex with guys who've clearly watched porn, and with the misrepresentation of sex, I think it gives us misguided opinions about relationships. I mean, I've seen Jeremy Kyle, and I think although those dysfunctional relationships are always trying to sort themselves out, but you never see the consequences of anything on television. It's just all about sort of, there's a lot of anger on television, and I think it normalises things which shouldn't be normalised. I think TV glamorises drugs and violence as well. I think television can have a positive effect. I think it can educate about drugs and sex, but at the same time it can do a lot of damage, because it always seems to be the cool guys on dramas who are kind of lighting cigarettes and taking drugs. And again, you don't see the consequences of taking drugs on the television. They're like, it's glamorised. Smoking is for cool people. And I mean, the fact that Formula One cars carry cigarette advertisements says to us, it's the cool macho guys that smoke, and you should do it too if you want to be cool and successful and drive a fast car. And I think, I'm not sure about the relationship between television and violence, because I've read a lot of studies about how children who watch violence on television are more likely to be violent. And I'm not really sure about that relationship, because I think children who are violent are more likely to seek out violent programmes. So it's a bit of like a chicken and an egg scenario. But I think it's demoralising and degrading to children to see that violence. I was watching something the other day and it was really just gruesome and brutal, and I thought, that normalises it. I mean, I watch Game of Thrones, and every series that starts, the kind of the brutal fight scenes at the beginning, I think, oh God, that's really disgusting. But towards the end of it, I'm like, okay, it's been normalised to me. It doesn't affect me so much. But yeah, chicken and egg scenario, I don't know if it makes people more violent. I think television also has an impact on the social life of a family and the development of children. You know, stuff like Sesame Street has a really positive impact, apparently, on children's social development. Stuff like, David Attenborough. I love watching David Attenborough. But then the majority of programmes, they're just to pacify people, like the X Factor, Britain's Got Talent. They're just kind of tools to keep us sort of slightly below average functioning as humans. You just sit down in front of the television, maybe you've had a hard day, and you switch off. And it makes it easy to do that. When you've got a television, you can cure boredom. If you're bored, switch on the television, there's going to be something on. Whereas I think before television, maybe families would have interacted a bit more, like played games, created. Like, I know if I make myself not watch television, then I read, or I write, or I go out for a walk and I do something a bit more helpful to me as a person than just sitting down and watching people, you know, do whatever they do on television. There's a lot of rubbish on television that, as I've said before, affects you in a bad way. I read the other day that apparently there's a correlation between television watching and obesity, which, yeah, you can see. It's nice to sit down with a biscuit or two and you eat mindlessly if you're watching television. You're not really mindful of what you're doing, I think. And there are a lot of adverts on television, probably targeted at children, for fatty, unhealthy foods like McDonald's, or stuff that targets children, and children are more receptive to that, and chocolates and that kind of thing, which and then they'll see those things in the shop and want them because they've been advertised to them as like something fun and that you need. I read the other day that there is a correlation between the amount of television you watch and your sense of alienation from the world. And I can really understand how that happens. Whenever I watch the news, I think the world is so depressing. At the moment, there's all this sort of bombing Syria and just torture and killing and horrible stuff going on. And I don't want to be in a world like that. There's loads of kind of negative stuff about immigration, and people assume that there's a lot more immigration than there is and get angry about it because it's on the television so much, and there's a lot less than people think, and people just shouldn't get angry about it because our culture is so much better when we're kind of in conversation with people from all over the world. I think I get really depressed when I see the news because there's hardly any good news. There was a study in America, and they asked, among other things, are you afraid to go out in your neighbourhood after dark? And apparently the people who watched more television were more likely to say yes. I mean, I'm always a bit dubious about that kind of study because it's always a bit out of touch with reality. But there's a high representation of crime. Coppers are always like bent coppers, and it seems like everyone's really unjust and out to get you, whereas actually my experience, my real world experience, is that most people are really great and they just want a relationship. They want to be kind, and I certainly want to be kind, and that's just not represented on television. It's always the bad stuff. And I think that gives people a kind of a really negative view about the world, which just, it's not realistic. And finally, I think our TV culture has a lot sort of intertwined with celebrity culture. You've got all these programs where normal people can go on and have their 5 minutes of fame, and that's not healthy either, because it's advertised that if everyone knows your name and you're successful with money, then you're going to be happy, and that's just not true. I think for some people it is, because they're also doing something they love, but there are loads of casting calls for families and couples to go on television, and it's superficial, and it makes us ignore our human condition to know ourselves and to seek truth. I think with all these like programs that wanting to make people famous, it's all about money and stuff rather than a kind of spiritual journey that the human person needs to take. It makes us kind of ignore the human condition. I think that's the most damaging thing that television does.
Hello. The media. How it's affected me. This morning I cut myself shaving. Gillette, the best a man can get? I don't think so. You show all these guys with their chiseled jaws and how awesomely athletic they look. I can't cope with that. I can't look like that, and I'm not them. I'm not even the same colour as them. And that's another issue with the media. When are we going to get our chance? You show all these really, like, every pop star, every singer, every actor has to be ripped to shreds and look really, really athletic. So, we spend all our time trying to look like them. We end up like this. Or here's your reward. Now, I tried my best to go with the media. It doesn't work. Do you realise that, like, it's okay to kill people, thousands and thousands of people a day with smoking, yet one slip of a nip, you show a nipple, and that's illegal. Who's that harming? Nobody. The media says that a guy with a cigarette in his hand, puffing away, is elegant and articulate. Doesn't matter how many people he's killing. Huh? What kind of nonsense is that? The media says that if you're naked, you should go to jail. Huh? Who are you harming? Yeah, I do not understand the media. Some of you can just kiss my ass.
But generally discuss the overall emphasis on like activists and protesters during a demonstration by the media. The particular kind of demo which I want to kind of refer to is the March Against Austerity, March for an Alternative in March in 2011. This was organised to for people to show opposition to the government's rapid kind of austerity programme and cutting of welfare and kind of welfare like programmes and things which are from the welfare state. And so there was about 500,000 people on this protest, and they basically it's been the biggest protest since the anti-Iraq war protest in 2003, and this was a momentous movement by the people and kind of showing to the government of the opposition to the cuts which they were implementing, the coalition government was implementing on the country and on the people. And this was a great day, like a great feeling being on that protest. My disappointment with the media is on and why it stems from this day. On that day there was some kind of minor activity from say like some people who targeted some businesses and Fortnum and Masons, and I was basically on that protest, and I was behind when the some protesters attacked the Fortnum and Masons building, and just looking at the media and kind of people who were the media that was there, just kind of just go around surround this kind of activity and just disregard the main protest which was going on. And this was like the most newsworthy thing, and that's what they were only focused on. and just looking at the news the next day and watching it and seeing that the coverage of the actual protests was was hardly anything at all. It was like if you weren't there on a day, you'd imagine that everyone, majority of people were actually vandalizing, things like that, and it was a complete kind of like disgrace to actually not even focus on the hundreds of thousands of people who went to that demo, when only like on the police numbers, like 0.03% of people in that protest were charged. And so like this, to me, just seeing the kind of like media focus on these few little acts which targeting these kind of wealthy shops and these wealthy businesses, it just goes to show that their main kind of focus is not to represent what was actually going on, but just these certain like flare-ups of trouble, which seem to be their kind of most interesting, their emphasis in the media, just to show the actual little things which happen and try to like try to present it as if this is these like rabble rousers, and not actually show the wider spectrum of the actual like opposition from the general public to the government. And by getting 500,000 people on the streets, that is a massive showing, like for one day. It's a massive like kind of showing of the opposition, the hatred to the cut kind of program. And if like talking about those few little acts, like for the media to represent it, this kind of like these people have disregard for like for like property and things like this, calling from a Boris Johnson autobiography from 1986. He said they got him and his buddies in a Bullingdon club got drunk and trashed the Ritz, went down Piccadilly Road and looted Fortnum Masons, and so like you take like one set of people and you do if you have the same act by a different set of people, it just depends what kind of class you are, represents what kind of how it's interpreted and how it's actually relayed in the media. Whereas like people didn't even refer to what Boris Johnson kind of did when he was in that posh club, the Bullingdon club. And so, and also the effect, the media representation of the protests, and that kind of emphasis on those little acts of vandalism. At the time, I think Home Secretary, Theresa May, she said that she was going to try to impose, give the police more powers to ban like balaclavas and other sorts of kind of clothing, like they did with the hooligans and banning them from going to football matches. They're going to ban these kind of people on protests wearing these kind of clothes, and in those that's where like the media has a massive role, because that little act of a few windows smashed or whatever has made because the media emphasise on that, has made the government actually reacting, like bringing more powers, like kind of to tackle like civil disobedience, and so taking away, like kind of attacking our civil, like I guess civil kind of rights, and there's just a disparity between those few acts and actually the kind of numbers of people who are on the general protests, And at the time, Vince Cable, I think he was a business, the Minister for Business, he said that in no way is this amount of people on a protest going to change government policy, economic policy. So basically, from what the kind of politicians said and what they're going to implement, is a disparity between small actions over what Theresa May was saying, and like the big actions in terms of like the mass people. They, you know, the media representation affected, and the TV's representation affected kind of people's, like the politicians were getting away with more, because then they give him more kind of like right to implement these kind of like new policies and stuff, and actually disregarding the whole opposition to the austerity program. But like the TV like focus on the protests has made me kind of think about, you know, every time anything is on the TV, and I have to like always think back to that time when it was misrepresented, the actual kind of spin, what was behind it, and what the TV focus on, trying to make things look a different way to suit their agenda. And now, from being in that situation where there was the TV disregarded the actual main kind of point of the protest, and they had their whole agenda behind it in like focusing on some tiny action.